Hey, this is Kriss Panic. We're at the Motorhead Lounge at Meadowtown 2013. We have, give us your name and what you do. Well, obviously from Carcass.
My name is Bill and I play guitar for the group Carcass.
Right. Now, for me, this is an absolute pleasure because I grew up, coming from England, and hard work influenced me massively. Growing up on the death metal scene in England and stuff. I mean, how do you find that people still receive that album now?
They receive it better now than they did at the time, I would say. Yeah, it's really nice. I didn't think the record would last this well, but it has.
I mean, for me, it's timeless, and for a lot of other guys, I mean, I think sometimes maybe back in the day, some of the imagery and the lyrics might have been a bit difficult for people to take, but now things have opened up so much that it's actually kind of cool. I mean,
yeah, I mean, the first two records, the imagery was confrontational, that's true. And musically, I guess perhaps some of that stuff was a little bit difficult for people to swallow. Now it's more or less standard, people tuning that low, using that much distortion, growling, Yeah, it's quite safe, I guess, now.
I mean, I've been talking to people, and for me, I remember going back to see Deicide, and this is like '98 and stuff, and the scene was so different. And nowadays, you've got these little kids who are like 19, who is kind of like growing up on you and being as technical as you guys, and that's okay.
Getting blown away.
It's all right. We can just take a quick pause. That's the beautiful thing about TV.
Yeah. All right.
Okay. Yeah, so how do you? Okay. So how do you think the scene's changed from when you started to where it is now? Because a lot of these kids now are like playing really heavy music, and maybe back in the day that would have been seen as like kind of really outrageous.
Yeah, I think the main difference is it's bigger now. You would not have had a festival of this size based on extreme music in say '89 or '91. There's just more people doing it. Like I said, it's almost been absorbed by the mainstream. So, I guess that happens to everything. Something can be edgy for so long before it eventually softens up and becomes acceptable.
Especially in the scene now, there's been a massive revival of especially bands coming back, and it's almost like a new start for a lot of people with touring and stuff. I mean, how do you find that for yourself?
I guess it is something like that for us because we didn't do anything for ages as a group anyway. We did things with other bands and privately, whatever. But yeah, it is kind of a new start, and the audience is so different now. It's bigger, and I don't know. It's really hard to encapsulate it, really. It's just like a different chapter altogether. I couldn't possibly make comparisons between now and say the period when we were doing the Hard Work record, because the climate is completely different musically.
Later on today, I'm going to interview Slipknot, and for me, when they released their first album, they incorporated so much death metal into a bit of new metal, which really exploded and opened up the scene. I mean, how did you find that when you kind of saw these guys doing that? I mean, did you think, wow, they've kind of really taken on some of the stuff that we're doing and taking it to mainstream to where it is now?
I was a little bit slow on the uptake with a band like that because I wasn't really listening to extreme metal. I couldn't really relate to the direction it took, with new metal and incorporating other elements that I wasn't too keen on, because I was actually quite conservative. I was more into just heavy metal and the whole lineage of rock and whatever. So when some of the more industrial elements came in, or people had turntablists or whatever, I couldn't quite grasp it. But with Slipknot, I was aware of it, of course, because they were massive, and people had told me that we were one of the bands that might have been influential in the beginning, but they did something very different with it. It was obviously going to be bigger than whatever we did because it was just built to take on the world rather than a small scene,
So how do you find yourself now in 2013 comparing back to that, and how do you feel you fit in within the genre and stuff like?
Well, I try not to think about that because it's a bit that's quite a bit scary. I guess we have our place, We were lucky enough to be around when death metal was still in the early stages, so whatever we did then was looked upon kindly later on.
I mean, it must be quite humbling to think that you've influenced so many artists through the times now for the last 20 years.
Well, a handful certainly, but that's enough for me. Christ, yeah, I'm chuffed with that. Yeah.
So what's up for you guys for the future now in the next sort of say 6 months?
Right. Well, we've got an album coming out in September. That's been on the way for ages. We actually finished recording the end of last year, and we ran into a few problems with getting the thing mixed because Colin, our producer, had some issues, and he ended up moving on to a Slipknot, not the Slipknot, sorry, Trivium record.
Yeah.
So Andy Sneap stepped in and mixed it for us. So it's actually ready to go now. But it's been a long, painful birth.
I'm sure you're looking quite forward to that. I mean, have you got a lot of, you doing a lot of shows in the festivals this summer?
A few, but next year's going to be way busier because the stuff we're doing now is obviously prior to the album's release. So things like this is stuff that got slotted in really quite last minute. Okay. And you know, we're playing Greece on Sunday, same thing, really last minute.
Do you find a lot of the crowd now? Do you play any of like the new songs that you've recorded, or are you gonna?
No, we decided not to play any new material until the record's actually out, and the reason for that is simply that we didn't want people judging the stuff on a shitty camera clip. Okay. That's the only reason. I mean, I'm raring to go. I really want to play this stuff but we're not going to be ridiculous and just play new stuff, you know. But we're going to hopefully, you know, sprinkle a set with some of them.
How do you think the crowd are going to react? Because obviously, when you have such sort of like legendary songs, you know, trying to mix them into the new stuff, and obviously being a musician, you want to showcase the new stuff. I mean, are you going to mix your set up to sort of like different sets, or is it going to be just a mixture, kind of like, you know, like a greatest hits?
Yeah, we'll play it by ear. But what I would say is, realistically, when you do a festival thing, you have to be mindful of the fact that you've got to play a greatest hit set. If you're doing your own show, say in a club or a 2,000 kind of venue, you can do whatever you want to do. It's your show. So in those situations, we'd be more inclined to bring in a bit more of the new material. But yeah, you just got to also respect what people want to hear. It's kind of got to be a compromise between, you know, the new thing and the old days.
Is there a little bit of dread at all, or you just kind of a bit nervous and anticipating like putting a new record out there?
No, I mean, I wouldn't say dread. Yeah, you're naturally nervy, of course, because there's some people who are just primed to slag this record off. You know, if you haven't done anything in the studio under that band name for 17 years, as we haven't, you can only expect flack from certain quarters. But I think the other people that have heard the record so far have gone nuts about it.
I never talk about lyrics or what the album's about, but for you guys, it's quite a prominent point, so it's very difficult to walk away. How do you go about setting yourself up to sort of like get back into that dark mode of writing music like that?
Well, the musical thing, that's easy, and it's a whole different side to it. Lyrically, that's Jeff's domain entirely. It's a shame he's not here to talk about it, but that comes very naturally to him. He is that guy. You know, he's a glass half empty kind of person, and but funny with it, you know. But I think the lyrics he's done on this record are brilliant. I always had a lot of respect for what he did in the past, but I actually think this is the best set of lyrics he's ever done. I was really impressed.
So when you go back home to Liverpool, do you ever? What's it like being in the rock bars? Do you get like a lot of people all over you, or was it more of a case of you know, you're sat in a pub and people just leave you alone?
Well, again, Jeff would be the one to answer that, really, because he lives there.
Oh, sorry, dude.
No, because the thing is, I did live there for a while, but now I live in East London. But he goes to the rock pub in Liverpool, and I don't think he gets much hassle at all. Yeah.
I used to run the Devonshire Arms in Camden.
Oh yeah, I know that place, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. There's something I'll say not on camera. But so, do I take it you hang out in all the crowbar and you do all of that? And
yeah, from time to time. To be honest, I'm more of a pub person. I actually just rather go to a boozer where there's different walks of life, where you can read the papers and stuff. Yeah.
All right. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. You've been absolutely amazing. This has been a pleasure for me because, for many reasons. Hey, I'm Kriss Panic, and we're at the Motorhead Lounge at Metaltown 2013. I want to thank Bill coming from Carcass. Rock on, get your horns out. That's my little thing. He's got a thumbs up. That's cool, man.